So here is the question number 70. Who developed the concept of the cultural circuit, which is important to the study of the interactions of culture and memory in oral history research method? This question was also a matter of discussion. The options, let's see. Michael Halrod and Roy Harrod, Zygmunt Bauman and Robert Putnam, Charles Taylor and Elizabeth Wilson, Graham Dawson and A.I. Thompson. So this question, cultural circuit. So, this question was also like they have to find a lot of things about this. So in this question, there was a doubt because as per the NTA, the correct option they have given us was the Charles Taylor and Elizabeth Wilson. But let me tell you, I have been through a lot of things while researching this question. But what we have found was option 4 here. This was the option. Graham Dawson and A.I. Thompson was the person who related with the cultural circuit. In oral history research, the concept of the cultural circuit refers to the dynamic interaction between personal memory and cultural representation, how individuals remember past events through the influence of broader societal narratives, media, and collective memory. Whatever the things that we store in our memory or the things that we have been through in the past, how we memorize those things, that is what the cultural circuit, that something relates to you from the past. In any form, whether you are memorizing everything, whether there is some technique that makes you feel there is something happened in the past and how you should recall and how you are going to memorize all these things. So this is what we find in the Graham Dawson in his work on masculinity, memory and war. So this concept cultural circuit we found in the writer of Graham Dawson and A.I. Thompson in his oral history work on Anzac veterans. They are credited with developing and applying the idea of the cultural circuit. Also, they showed how memory is not just a personal internal process, it moves through a circuit of personal testimony, public discourse, popular culture, and institutional narratives. Okay, so this is what we have found. This concept is foundational to understanding how history and memory interact culturally in oral history studies. So this is the main thing about the cultural circuit that we should understand. Other options do not apply because it is totally, and also it was related with the Stuart Hall. Stuart Hall, no, the option 3. The cultural circuit model is often associated. It is a cultural circuit model is often associated with Stuart Hall and the Center of Contemporary Cultural Studies, but Charles Taylor and Elizabeth Wilson contributed significantly to the model of interaction between production, representation, and identity, consumption, and regulation, which is applied in cultural and memory studies, especially in oral history and identities. Everybody somehow related, but according to the question we have that who developed the concept of cultural circuit. So it was the answer option 4, Graham Dawson and A.I. Thompson. Okay. So we are analyzing the question also that how answer and question are mismatched. We are finding something else, and as for the NTA, the why the answer is not matching, because you know what they have done. It's like they have been trying to match the answer, or you can say they have forgotten what they have asked to the students, that what actually the question developed, the who coined the term. There are so many questions they find error, that is actually mismatch. Totally, it was actually a blunder. So let's move on to the next, everybody. Question 71 we have, who has designed Panopticon and used the term as a new mode of obtaining power of mind over mind. Panopticon, you have to find that who has designed. Option we have Anthony Esthorpe, Jeremy Bentham, Alan Sheridan, and Madan Saraf. So it was designed, they have been asked. So it was the option 2, Panopticon, and a new mind that they have given us, that we have to control our mind, overthinking. So it was Jeremy Bentham who designed the Panopticon. The Panopticon was a prison model designed by Jeremy Bentham in the late 18th century. It was actually designed, by Jeremy Bentham in the late 18th century, that how cells building arrange in a central guard tower, allowing constant albeit potentially. You can remember this. It is a circular structure with windows allowing the guard, the way we find in the cell reason, the how the structure is. So initially the design was like that by Jeremy Bentham, then later it is revised. So here Bentham described it as a way to create a new mode of obtaining power of mind over mind, allowing surveillance without the watched knowing when they are watched. You are constantly being watched by somebody, and you are living into that constant watch. So this was the original idea by Jeremy Bentham. In a prison, how the prisoners have been kept and they are in a constant watch through the guard, through the cameras, through the securities. So this is what the meaning surveillance here. This concept was later popularized in critical theory by Michel Foucault in the Discipline and Punish as a panopticism. Panopticism. So this was the initial idea by Jeremy Bentham. Anthony Aesop, Sheridan, and Sarup are critics, theorists who engaged with discourse and ideology but did not coin or design the Panopticon. Okay. Now let's move on to the next question, everybody. Another question we have: which of the following critics are associated with the Frankfurt School of German intellectuals? Walter Benjamin, Laura Mulvey, Travis Henderson, Max Horkheimer, Leo Lowenthal. And here are the options. Which of the following critics? These are the name of the critics and who are associated with the Frankfurt School of German intellectuals. We have to find out that who of these critics can be best fitted. So A, D, and E. The writer we have Walter Benjamin, Max Horkheimer, and Leo Lowenthal. These three critics, Walter Benjamin, Max Horkheimer, and Leo Lowenthal, was the correct one. The Frankfurt School was an institute for social research in Frankfurt, Germany, where applying Marxism and other disciplines, why they have done to analyze capitalist society. And capitalism is related with the Marx. Karl Marx, one of the thinker that shook the perspective of many people. And by inspiring Karl Marx theory, capitalism, Frankfurt School, they have also started this to analyze the capitalist society. So these were the critics. Okay, so this school of thought also known as critical theory. Okay, the Frankfurt School is also known as the critical theory that analyzes society, culture, and power structures from a Marxist perspective. What Karl Marx has set the perception, they are also associated with that. Other options: Laura Mulvey and Travis Henderson. Laura Mulvey, a feminist film theorist known for the concept of the male gaze. What is the perception of the male while watching a female? So it is Laura Mulvey. We can simply not associate it with the Frankfurt School, and Travis Henderson not connected to the Frankfurt School anyhow. Okay. Now let's move on to the next question, everybody. It's matching. So question here is, you have to match list 1 with list 2. Poverty and un-British rule in India, The Slave Girl of Agra, Love Songs and Elegies, Gora, and Romesh Chandra Dutt, Dada Bhai Nauroji, Rabindranath Tagore, and Manmohan Singh. And here are the options you have. You have to match the first one with the second. First one with the second list. These are the work and these are the authors. So this was the correct answer. Correct answer was that Gora we can match with option D, 3, Rabindranath Tagore. So here in the find, option A is here. Poverty and Un-British Rule in India, written by Dada Bhai Nauroji. So option 2 here is going to be the correct. The Slave Girl of Agra, written by Romesh Chandra Dutt. Option first can be correct. Is the correct. Love Songs and Elegies, written by Manmohan Ghosh. Option 4 is going to be the correct. And Gora, it is a famous novel by Rabindranath Tagore. So option 3 is the correct answer. So it was the correct. Gora, at the last moment preparation, there was a mention, but students got confused. It's no problem. It happens sometimes. So in this question paper, June 2025, I think they have be tried to be so. Next question we have: who made the following remark? The Sanskrit language, whatever be its antiquity, is of a wonderful structure, more perfect than the Greek, more copious than the Latin, and more exquisitely refined than either. Yet bearing to both of them a stronger affinity, both in the roots of verbs, in the forms of grammar, than could possibly have been produced by accident. So we have to identify that who has remarked, whether it's Sir William Jones, Patsy M. Lightbourne, Ferdinand de Saussure, or Albert Sidney Hornby. So it was by Sir William Jones. Sir William Jones has remarked this statement. This famous statement was made by Sir William Jones in 1786 during his address to the Asiatic Society in Calcutta. Calcutta. Originally, now it's Kolkata. It laid the foundation of comparative linguistics, particularly Indo-European language studies. Here, Sir William Jones is credited with pointing out the linguistic relationship between Sanskrit, Greek, and Latin. So, this statement is by Sir William Jones. Okay. Another question we have, arrange the following statements in chronological order. I told you now that there was a in previous few question paper, if you have studied previous question paper, if you have a study, you will find the chronology and matching questions in a sequence order. But in this question paper, June 2025, they have mixed everything. Statement after chronology, chronology after matching, matching after one liner, memory based. So everything is not following any pattern, but somehow they have been trying to. We can't even define what their mind was while setting the paper. So in this question, we have to arrange the following statements in a chronological order again. So it was Nizim Ezekiel founded Quest, a general intellectual review. Then option B, the Illustrated Weekly of India sponsored a short story competition and began publishing contemporary Indian English poetry. The Writers' Workshop began to publish volumes of poetry, and C.R. Mandy became editor of the Illustrated Weekly of India. And here are the options. And this question was the option 2 was the correct answer. DBAC. Nizim Ezekiel founded the Quest, a general intellectual review. Quest was launched in 1954 to 55, and Nizim Ezekiel became its editor shortly thereafter. And the mid 1950s, that means you can simply remember 54 to 55. So it was the correct statement. The second was B. The Illustrated Weekly of India sponsored a short story competition and began publishing contemporary Indian English poetry in 1950. So it was also correct. This happened under the editorship of C.R. Mendy in the late 1940s to early 50s, when the weekly started upcoming supporting Indian writing in English. And option C here, the Writers' Workshop began to publish volumes of poetry, and in Calcutta, it was founded by P. Lal in 1958 and began publishing Indian English poetry soon after. Okay, so the A, B, C, and then D is was that C.R. Mandy, an Irish who became editor of the Illustrator. So according to the chronological sequence, DBAC is the C.R. Mandy became editor 1940s, around weekly sponsors writing poetry early 1950s. Ezekiel starts West 1954, and Writer Workshop it was in 1958. So this was the correct chronology. Okay. Now let's move to the next question. It was again it's matching. So we have to match characters with the novel. Ursula Skrebensky, Women in Love, Gandron Gerald, we have Lady Chatterley's Lover, Connie Mellor, Sons and Lovers, Miriam Paul, The Rainbow. Options you have here. And characters, novels, for the matching and the characters, they have also been so deep. Even the minor characters are in focus. Okay. So poetry class we have already finished, and fiction, so short stories class is running, in which I have also mentioned the minor characters. So it was the correct answer of the question that Ursula Skrebensky was the character from the Rainbow. So option 3. Ursula Brangwyn has a relationship with Anton Skrebensky. So A with 4. Gadron Gerald, these characters are from Women in Love. Then Connie Mellors, these characters from the Lady Chatterley's Lover, and last one we have Miriam Paul, these are from the Sons and Lovers. Okay, so these were the correct matching. So here is the another question number 77. In this question, we have to find out that which of the following rules are correct regarding the formatting of date and time. Date and time in the body of thesis writing according to MLA Handbook 9th edition. Okay, in this question, let me tell you, I found the answer A, B, and C answer correct, but here the NT was selected the option 3. So I'm leaving this question. We will, any of you found the correct answer, you can simply notify me, or 9th edition, MLA handbook, how important this is for. So when we start the class about this, we will understand. Okay. As for the my question, it was A, B, and C. MLA recommends comma after the year in month, day, year format, and B. comma used between month and year or season and year, and MLA allows writing decades as the 1980s or the 80s. So this was, I found the correct, but we can simply leave this, okay? Then another question we have here, Jacques Derrida's archive fever, a Freudian impression is related to. So for this, I found two correct answers, but here the correct answer, archive fever is related to archival method because it was totally related with the archive method. That is option one. But also visual method was also there. So we will have to find the best possible answer for this question also. Jacques Derrida's archive fever, a Freudian impression, 1995, is a philosophical and psychoanalytic exploration of the archive, how memory, history, and power function in relation to what is preserved, recorded, and forgotten. So Derrida coined the term archive fever to describe the human compulsion to record, preserve, and control knowledge. But it was somehow it found that visual method is also based, but the best possible answer we still have to find out for this. So let's move on to the next one. Now I can simply understand how the students have been through while solving the question of June 2025. It's totally how their mind was during the exam. So again, the question number 79 is who prepared the first blueprint on English education in India in 1792? So it was Charles Grant. Option 2 was the correct answer. Blueprint on English education in India. So further, if you have to discuss, in 1792, Charles Grant authored a tract titled Observation on the States of Society among the Asiatic Subjects of Great Britain, okay, which was advocated for the spread of English education in India. We know how English spread, it's being in India. So this was based on that. Suggested using Western, that is Christian morals to uplift the Indian society, proposed government-funded education policies based on British principles. So everything they were doing, the Britishers, but it was totally based. It should be, or it should have been based on their own principle, not the Indian. Move on to the next. There is a question again. It was the matter of discussion. The term remainder. The question was that the term remainder has been first used by. So NTS gave us the answer Jacques Derrida. But the first this term was used by Giorgio Agamben or Jacques Derrida. It was the that we are finding the correct one, but Jacques Derrida, there was no related that who was the first. Jacques Derrida was first that found the term remainder. Giorgio Agamben introduced the term remainder within his home. Giorgio Agamben introduced the term remainder within his Homo Sacer project. In works such as The Remnants of Auschwitz, The Witness and the Archive, and Homo Sacer, Agamben discusses the remainder as what cannot be fully represented, integrated, or captured by law, language, or political system. So this concept is, we can say, the first time, if you will say the remainder, who was the first person that used this term or coined this term, so it will be the Giorgio Agamben instead of Jacques Derrida. But why NTA has selected the Jacques Derrida, we are still finding that. So in this now, Agamben explores how sovereign power functions by producing remainders, that is those who are included only through exclusion. So Jacques Derrida is also related with this term, how Derrida, you know how he has conceptualized the term remainder to left or unsolved by a system of thought or text. The remainder is not a minor detail here, but Jacques Derrida, he has challenged the philosophical notion of totalization. So idea of the text, concept or system of meaning can be fully self-contained and not closed. So this was the Jacques Derrida's term. But if the question is that who first used this term, so it will be the option 1. Okay. Here it is mentioned that Derrida used the term remainder and related concepts like rest and trace as part of his broader philosophical critique. And Giorgio Agamben, however, is often credited with formalizing and applying the term remainder as a core political and ethical concept, particularly in biopolitics, law, and theory of sovereignty. So here you can, if the first person who used the term remainder would be the Giorgio Agamben, and somehow Derrida is also related with the term because he has also conceptualized. So we can say that NTA should have cleared the question. They just have asked that who has first used, and the options both we have, the first and the one who has conceptualized. So you can say, the questions is not clear. So what students is going to understand, how they will understand, because you are not clear with the question. What are you asking yourself? You are not even clear to you. So the first MP should ask the question clear to the students. Then only all the students will be able to answer correctly. You are you are confused yourself, and you are also by asking such questions making all the students confused too. So how they will answer? Obviously, they will be confused. Now let's move to the next question, everybody. So this was the question, actually totally tricky. Next question we have, which group of the poets among the following is known as the Georgian poets? These are the minor ages of English literature, Edwardian, Georgian, Commonwealth period. But still we have to go through all the ages, and in poetry section I have included all the ages and all the minor major writers. So option you have, and Georgian, there are the writers from the Georgian and Edwardian age known as the war poets. So you also have to remember. So here was the option Robert Brooke, Walter de la Mare, the Georgian poets. Option 2 was the correct one. Okay. Georgian poets were a group of British poets whose work was published in a series of anthologies titled Georgian Poetry, and the date was around 1910 to 1922, edited by Edward March during the reign of King George I. Okay, so their poetry was traditional, focused on rural life, nature, and often resisted with the modernist experiments of Eliot and Pound. So you can remember this, or you can watch the video, Georgian and Edwardian age. So this was the correct. Remember the writer, Edwardian age or Georgian age. Now, then the writer name you have to remember: Robert Brooke, Walter de la Mare, John Drinkwater, James Elroy Flecker. Now let's move to the next question. Who described Raja Ram Mohan Roy as the inaugurator of the modern age in India? So it was also correct. Rabindranath Tagore was the correct answer. Rabindranath Tagore described Raja Ram Mohan Roy as the inaugurator of the modern age in India in recognition of his immense contribution to, how Raja Ram Mohan Roy reformed so many things in in India. Social and religious reform he done through the Brahmo Samaj, who is also established this abolition of sati, advocacy for women's right, education, and freedom of expression, bridging Western Enlightenment thought with Indian tradition. So that is why Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Rabindranath addressed him as the inaugurator of the modern age in India. Now let's move to the next question, everybody. Then we have question 83. We have to choose the correct events corresponding with their year. The first Official Language Commission submitted its report in 1956. The first ELTI was established in Allahabad in 1954. The Central Institute of English and Foreign Languages established in Hyderabad in 1958. This question was also matter of discussion, because here it is mentioned the correct year 1956, but not 1950. 1956 it was mentioned, but after finding so many times, here, both the options mentioned ACE, not in options, the NT is not given. Everyone, as per everyone's analyzation, this was the correct, which was not in option, but NTA chose B, C, and E. So here, the Official Language Commission submitted its report in 1956. The Official Language Commission was appointed in 1955 and submitted its report in 1956. It was correct, 1956. The first ELTI, English Language Teaching Institute, was established in Allahabad in 1954. It was incorrect. Correct year was 1956, not 54. The Central Institute of English in Foreign Languages, CIEFL, was established in Hyderabad in 1958. So they have given the options which is totally unfit. So this was also in doubt. What from where they have arranged all these questions, where they have brought these questions? So the options they have given is not correct. So many of the teachers also said that now this question should also be dropped because the year is mentioned wrong. CIEFL, now it is known as EFLU, was indeed established in 1958 in Hyderabad. 1958 in Hyderabad. The National Policy on Education came in 1960. It was incorrect. The first National Policy on Education came in 1968. And also the NEP and POA came in 1986. So the new education policy and the accompanying program of action were launched in 1986 with the NEP. So this was the correct statement, but the options was not there. Random picked. Another question we Who has coined the phrase bricolage? Claude Levi-Strauss, Raymond Williams, Martin Heidegger, Michel Foucault. So the correct answer, bricolage, was the term coined by Claude Levi-Strauss. Option 1 was correct. The term bricolage was coined by Claude Levi-Strauss, the French anthropologist and the ethnologist, in his book The Savage Mind, 1962. This was the book. Bricolage, it refers to the process of constructing meaning using available materials, especially in myth and culture, instead of using new resources. The materials that already exist to you, you have to create something from that. So this was the bricolage meaning according to Strauss. Also, in postmodern theory, bricolage refers to assembling text, styles, or artifacts from different sources. So this was the differentiation between the what he has given us, and in postmodern theory, the term is changed. Levi-Strauss contrasts the bricoler, that means handyman or tinkerer, with the engineer scientist in his structuralist theory. Another question we have, identify the correct chronological order as per the publication years of the following years. And the answer, we have to arrange the correct chronological order as per the publication years of the following works. Here the works is given and here are the options. So we have to arrange them correctly. So it was the correct answer, B, A, C, D, 4. It was correct. The Advancement of Learning, 1605, by Francis Bacon. A Characteristics of Men, Manners, Opinions and Time, 1711, by Anthony Ashley Cooper. Option C, Inquiry into the Original of Our Idea of Beauty and Virtue, 1725, by Francis Hutcheson. This was also correct. And the D, Plan of a Dictionary of the English Language, 1747 to 55, by Samuel Johnson. So this was the B, A, C, D was the correct answer. So another question we have, that in this question, we have to identify all the poems by W.B. Yeats, the modernist age poet. The Second Coming, Death of Sohrab, Lapis Lazuli, Easter, 1966. This is not by him. The Homecoming Among the School Children, Byzantium, When You Are Older. This is not by him. So Sailing to Byzantium, Leda and the Swan. The correct answer of the question was option 4, No Second Troy, Lapis Lazuli, Easter, 1916, and When You Are Older. Poetry section, while describing about all the work, I have included all the work by W.B. Yeats, and in three phases, his poets are described. So you can watch the poetry section video, okay? And the playlist has changed all detailed class, all 10 units detailed class, December 2025. The playlist is now, because poetry section, fiction, drama, cultural studies, linguistics, everything you will find in this set. All the 10 units you will find in one playlist. To avoid any confusion, you will find it at one place. So this was the correct answer, okay? Death of Sohrab is by Matthew Arnold. So this option can be eliminated. The Homecoming is not a known poem by Yeats. It is associated with Harold Pinter, and the House of Life is a sonnet sequence by Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Okay. Another question we have, that obviously you can see here, that who has coined the term Onto-theology? And the options: Jacques Derrida, Felix Guattari, Gilles Deleuze, and Ben Jonson. So this question was also discussed. Why? Because none of the options, the one who has coined the term, the one who has popularized the term, we cannot find any of the name in the given option. So here in the correct answer, this is what I have mentioned. I don't know what NTA has selected. They have selected Jacques Derrida. So it was totally incorrect. Why? Because the term Onto-theology was actually popularized by Martin Heidegger, and before Martin Heidegger, it was the term that is coined by Immanuel Kant in 18th century. So both the name we cannot find in the options. Still, they have not dropped this question also, which is totally how they can do this with the student. Onto-theology was a concept introduced by Martin Heidegger to describe the conflation of metaphysics. In his critique of Western metaphysics, Heidegger argued that Western thought reduces being to a highest being, that is God, and this formed the core of an onto-theology. So he was the one who popularized, and they have asked that who coined the term. So it was Immanuel Kant, but we cannot find Immanuel Kant in the option. So obviously students will be confused, because you are asking any random questions, which is totally inappropriate and confusing itself for you and the students. All the options given in this question is totally incorrect, okay? So, they have chose the Jacques Derrida. Although text later discussed and responded to Heidegger's notion of onto-theology, but as per your question that who coined, so there should be the option Immanuel Kant or any of Martin Heidegger. They both are not in the options. So still, Felix Guattari and Gilles Deleuze are post-structuralist philosophers, but neither coined or nor significantly focused on the term onto-theology. Ben Jonson was a Renaissance dramatist and poet, completely unrelated to this. So next question we have, who among the following Mughal rulers carried out an experiment for newborn babies to be raised in silence, only to find that the children produced no speech at all? It was Akbar, Bahadur Shah, Zafar, Aurangzeb, or Babur. So the correct answer was Akbar. Emperor Akbar, the third Mughal emperor, is known to have conducted an experiment to discover the natural or original language of human beings. So this was the question again. English literature, they are asking such questions. He raised several babies in complete silence, isolated from any spoken language, thinking that they would eventually begin speaking divine. Let's move on to the next question, everybody. So we have to, here is the question number 89. We have to find out the author, writer with the work, Liberty of the Press, The Vision of Mirza, On the Knocking at the Gate in Macbeth, and The Mental Slavery of Modern Workmen. Here are the options, and the correct option we have found here. Option 3, Liberty of the Press, John Milton. This refers to Milton's famous pamphlet Areopagitica 1644. It was a foundational text advocating for the freedom of the press and against censorship. There was a issue on this thing also. The Vision of Mirza, an Oriental allegory by Joseph Addison. This allegory appeared in The Spectator, where Addison uses the character Mirza to represent a philosophical vision of human life. Okay. Then another one we have here, On the Knocking at the Gate in Macbeth, Thomas D. Quincy. It is an critical essay analyzing the psychological effect of the knocking sound in the Shakespeare's Macbeth, written by De Quincey in 1823. Remember the year. Mental Slavery of Modern Workmen by John Ruskin. This concept is explored in several of Ruskin's works, such as Unto This Last, criticizing industrial capitalism and its dehumanizing effect on works. So this was the correct option. Now let's move to the next. Another question, we have least one author and least two work. Lois Reynolds Care, Dorothy Lives, Gwen Ferris Ringwood, and Carol Bolt. And here, Dark Harvest, Guest of Honor, Red Emma, and Joe Terry. This was also tricky to find the question answer because it is too deep. The correct answer was third. So in the options we find this was the correct but tricky because the work and for writer is too minor. So Louis Reynolds Care, Guest of Honor. Louis Reynolds Care is a Canadian playwright. Do remember, Guest of Honor is one of her significant work that deals with Canadian historical and social themes, dramatizing power relations and the complexity of authority figures. Okay. Then another one we have Dorothy Lives, Dorothy Joe Derry, fourth option. Dorothy Lives, a Canadian poet also and writer, also contributed to documentary drama. Joe Derry is her play based on the life of a miner involved in the 1930s labor struggle. Okay, so this was the correct. Then another one we have Gwen Ferris Ringwood, Dark Harvest. Gwen Ferris Ringwood is often called the first major Canadian woman playwright, and also the work Dark Harvest is her well-known play that focuses on the struggles of prairie farmer during the Depression. Then another one we have Carol Bolt, Red Emma. This was the correct. Carol Bolt is also a Canadian playwright noted for feminist themes. So all the writers are Canadian and their work. So we can say from the world literature, they have brought the minor writers and the work. So that is also tricky for the student. They are somehow trying to tell the students that you should go deeper. And another question we have here, arrange the following steps of material collection according to the hierarchy given by Delia de Souza, Correa and W.R. Owens in the Handbook to Literary Research. Literary research. On the basis of these two, we have to find out what they have given in their literary research. So it was answer option 4, CBAB, according to the Handbook to Literary Research. They have given us here. Identify what is available online. Start by reviewing online databases and digital resources. Visit your own university library. You know how we find out the materials, resources for when we are about to research something. Identify your nearest major research library and then visit your nearest major research library. So this was the correct option. Another question we have here, identify the subtitle of Oliver Goldsmith's semi-autobiographical poem, The Traveller. The Traveller, Oliver Goldsmith's semi-autobiographical poem. So it was option 1 was the prospective Prospect of Society. Oliver Goldsmith's poem The Traveller, semi-autobiographical poem The Traveller 1764, carries the subtitle of Prospect of Society, reflecting the poem's philosophical exploration of human happiness and national character as observed through the travel. So it is based on the travel experience that they note. Then this question was also matter of discussion. If the glide is distinct enough to be heard, the vowel plus glide will be treated as. So the correct answer was a sequence of two vowels. A sequence of two vowels. After going through a lot, I have found the correct answer. Diphthong, monophthong, and sequence of two consonant won't be correct. Why? A sequence of two vowel. When the glide is distinctly audible, the listener perceives two vowels in the sequence, not one blended sound. And here example is given how we heard the sound. So this was the correct answer. They are not diphthongs but two separated vowel sound pronounced one after the other. So that is why the option 3 was the correct answer. A vowel plus glide involves only vowel sound, not consonant. So if there is a mention in the question vowel plus glide, you can choose the correct answer when there is the word mentioned. Additionally, information if you want here is a glide is a quick movement from one vowel position to another within the same syllable, and if the glide is indistinct, it can sound like a single vowel. Okay, so and if the glide is distinct enough to be heard, the sound is treated as two separated vocalic elements. So option 3 was the correct answer. Then another question we had, match the list with list second, thinking about women, the female unique, the dialectic sex, the feminine mystic, Betty Sheridan, Mary Ellen, Shulamit Firestone, or German Greer. So it was the answer was option 1 was the correct. Thinking About Women by Mary Ellen, a feminist critique of literary representations of women. The female unique, we have German Greer, a foundational feminist text challenging traditional roles. Then we have The Dialectic of Sex by Shulamit Firestone, radical feminist theory arguing for gender revolution. So this question is based on feminism. The feminine mystic Betty Sheridan by sparked the second wave of feminism analyzing suburban housewife discontent. So this question was based on feminism. Then from the Indian literature, we had the question, arrange the following novels in a chronological order as per their years of publication. The Serpent and the Rope, The Two Leaves and the Bird, A Bend in the Ganges, So Many Hungers, Waiting for Mahatma. So as per the chronology, we have to arrange them. Two Leaves and the Bird, option 3 was the correct. 1937, it was by Mulk Raj Anand. So Many Hungers by Bhavani Bhattacharya, Waiting for the Mahatma, R.K. Narayan, The Serpent and the Rope, 1960, Raja Rao, and The Bend in the Ganges by Manohar Malgaonkar, 1964. So this was the correct chronology. Move on to the next question. Now, the question number 96 we have here, choose the correct key points related to approach to feminism and gender studies. So for the gender studies and feminism approach, we have to find out the correct key points that mentioned in the option. And the options we have here, feminism is concerned with the marginalization of women in a patriarchal culture. Feminist critics explain how the subordination of women is reflected, challenged by literary text. Option C, they examine the experiences of women of all races, classes, sexual preferences, and culture. And option D and E, Mary Wollstonecraft defines 4 models of sexual differences: biological, linguistic, psychoanalytic, and culture. E is saying feminist critics' goals to expose patriarchal premises and resulting prejudice to promote the discovery and revaluation of literature by women and to examine social, culture, and psychosexual context of literature and literary criticism. While F option is saying that Simone de Beauvoir prefers womenism to feminism. So these are the options. So as per the feminism approach and gender studies, what are feminist writers, feminist critics have given their thoughts on gender studies and feminism approach, we have to find out the correct one. So the answer of this question was, again, it is mentioned here, correct answer was given. NTS chose option A, B, and D. A. Feminism is concerned with the marginalization of women in a patriarchal culture. And the second option was saying that B and D. B was feminist critics explain how the subordination of women is reflected or challenged by the literary text. And D, Mary Wollstonecraft defines 4 model of sexual differences. So A, B, D as per, but here the correct answer I found B, D, and E. First one is also accurate, but B accurately describes a feminist critical approach how text reflects or challenge women's subordination. And D is right, and E correctly outlines the goals of feminist literary criticism. So this was also matter of discussion. The question was here, if we will go with the discussion, feminism, the option A was saying feminism is concerned with the marginalization of women in patriarchal culture. So correct, this is a fundamental concern of feminist theory, addressing how patriarchal structure operates or marginalized women. So this is actually correct. That is why feminist approach and feminist critique started, that many of the critics said that the work actually, those work that actually written by the women should be judged on the basis of female perception, and this is what here mentioned. Option B is saying feminist critique explains how the subordination of women is reflected or challenged by literary text. Correct, as feminist literary criticism analyzes text to explore how they perpetuate or resist gender norms and systems of power throughout when we study the literary text by the other women writers, we found out in their work that how they are going through and what is the phenomena. Option C was the examine the experience of women of all races, classes, sexual preferences, and culture. Each from all the races, classes, the women in the literature are able to write and share what they felt, what they feel. So this was also correct. This aligns with intersectional feminism, which recognizes that race, class, sexuality, and cultural all impact women's experiences. On the basis of all these things, women write and share their view on the feminist critics and feminist work, feminism. So this is also suitable option. Now let's move on to the next question. And then another question we have here, the term trace. The term trace, which refers to the trace of the other, has been borrowed by Jacques Lacan from, here was the option, and this question was also option 2, Emmanuel Levinas. This was the correct answer. The term trace, particularly in the context of the trace of the other, originates in the philosophy of Emmanuel Levinas, and from here Jacques Lacan has borrowed. In Levinas' ethical philosophy, the trace of the other we will find refers to the presence of the other, that means another person, that can never be fully grasped or reduced to the same. So he has borrowed from this philosophy. The trace is what remains of an encounter or presence that escape total comprehension, and ethical responsibility that the self feels toward the other. And Jacques Lacan, in his term, while borrowing this, what he has said, while Jacques Lacan is deeply influenced by Freud, Saussure, and Claude Levi-Strauss, he also engaged with Levinas' ideas trace, particularly when discussing the other in the symbolic order. Another person to describe, he borrowed this term from Levinas. In this, Lacan integrates the idea of the trace of the other in his formulations about the subjectivity and the unconsciousness. Okay. Here are the more information that will be helpful for all of you. Simon Freud, he developed concept like repression in the unconsciousness and psychic inscription, uncanny, but not the trace of the other. Christopher Norris was a literary theorist who writes about Derrida, not someone who originated the concept. And in other way, trace is a key concept in Jacques Derrida's deconstruction, referring to the absence and the presence within the language. Every sign carries the trace of other signs. So according to Jacques Derrida, this is the meaning of the trace. And Jacques Lacan, borrowed by Levinas' concept, the psychoanalyst borrowed this notion to deepen his theory of the unconscious structure like a language, especially in his later post-structuralist influenced work. Okay, so this was an extra information helpful for you. Now let's move to the next. So the next question we have here, question number 98. Kipling's story Mrs. Bathurst is set in. So this question, the answer was option 2, South Africa. Mrs. Bathurst is set in South Africa. Rudyard Kipling's short story Mrs. Bathurst is part of his Traffics and Discoveries 1904 collection. The story unfolds mainly through a conversation among naval officers in South Africa. It reflects on the theme of memory, modern technology, that is cinema, and the unreliability of the person. So this was the correct answer, option 2. Okay. Move on to the next. Then another question we have here, the notion of the author constitutes the privileged moment of individualization in the history of ideas, knowledge, literature, philosophy, and the science. Identify the critical essay in which the line occurs. This line we have to find out the notion of the author constitutes the privileged moment of the individualization in the history of ideas, knowledge, literature, philosophy, and the science. All these things we find in one writer's work, and that is we have option 2, what is an author by Michel Foucault. This quote comes from the Michel Foucault's 1969 essay, What is an Author, in which he has discussed in Foucault's challenge the traditional role of the author as a source of meaning and authority. We know while discussing the author and authorship, I have given the example of Roland Barthes' Death of the Author, that once the text is handed to the reader, who that text meaning is created by the reader itself. There is no role of the author remains. And in such similarly, Michel Foucault's What is an Author described that his role, the author function as a cultural and discursive constructor rather than a stable identity. Okay. Move on to the next question, everybody. Some questions, if we see, are too easy to tackle, but it's on the extreme level, if you will go, the most of the questions are too tricky, and totally it is like confusing, because the option itself are confusing, because everything is no, it's like they have mixed up. So that is why I think this is the problem. The students were not able to find the or reach to the conclusion of the final answer because of the not only the tricky questions, difficult questions, but the mixed up, they have mixed up the options. They have not focused on one thing, but they have tried to mix one thing to another, and because of this there were so many questions found to be confusing. Question number 100, we have, which of the following works is not written by William Cooper? So it was The Field of the Martial Work, option 3, it was correct. This work not written by, we have to find out now. So William Cooper, pseudonym, the name of have we here, H.S. Hoff, is known for realist novels like Scenes from Provincial Life, Scenes from Married Life, and Memoirs of a New Man. So the correct answer was The Field of Martial's memoir is not written by William Cooper. Scenes from Provincial Life, written by William Cooper, 1950. It is a semi-autobiographical novel featuring Joe Lunn. Okay, it is correct. Now, Scenes from Married Life, it is also a sequel to Scenes from Provincial Life, written by William Cooper. It is the sequel of this work. So this was also correct. Memoirs of a New Man, part of a Cooper's John Lunn series, written by William Cooper. It was also correct. But The Field of Martial's memoir, it is not written by William Cooper. Instead, that this title does not appear in his bibliography, and this novel among his lesser known work. So this work is not written by him. Now another question we have, which of the following statements have been given by J.S. Mill in his The Subjection of Women? The Subjection of Women, option A, B, C, D, E we have here, and options also. So in this question, here you have to find out that which of these options are a part of J.S. Mill's work, The Subject of Women. Statements, we have to find the correct one. So the correct answer over the question was A, C, and D. In The Subjection of Women, J.S. Mill critiques the legal and social subordination of women. The following statements are aligned with the arguments that reflects the patriarchal norm Mill critiques. C, directly reflects Mill's comparison between the condition of wives and slavery, resonates with Mill's argument about women being bound in marriage. And statements B and E do not appear in Mill's work. Why? Because it is particular sounds more like a modern radical feminist idea, not Mill's 19th century context. So these are the correct options of the question. J.S. Mill, these are the correct options. Let's move on to the next question. Another question we have here. Lord Curzon used the report of Indian Universities Commission of 1902. Lord Curzon used the report of Indian Universities Commission of 1902 to decentralize school education, give representation to Indians in policy making, withdraw Indian Universities Act of 1905, centralize school education under a Director General Education. So the correct answer was option 4. Why he has it was because he wanted to centralize school education under a Director General of Education. Lord Curzon implemented the recommendations of the Indian Universities Commission's 1902 with the goal of bringing greater control and standardization to education in India. One of the key outcomes was the Indian Universities Act of 1904, which emphasized centralization and government control over universities, including curriculum regulation and tighter affiliation rules. So this was the correct answer. Lord Curzon, Option 4, because he wanted to centralize school education under a Director General of Education. Now, another question we have: since the publication of Samuel Johnson's preface to Shakespeare in 1765, which of the unities have been regarded as optional devices? Unities of place, time we have. So we have to find out optional devices available as needed by playwrights in England to achieve special effects of dramatic concentration. Unities of time and action, unities of place and action, unity of place and time, and unity of place only. So the correct answer of the question: unities of place and time. What Samuel Johnson has discussed, he, in his famous preface to Shakespeare, challenged the rigid adherence to the classical unities. So he discarded the place and time, derived from Aristotle's three unities, that is time, place, and action. TPA, time, place, and action. Unity of action, what he has said. Johnson defended Shakespeare's practice of mixing subplots and argued that a play can still maintain coherence without following strict unity of action. So this unity remained flexible. Unity of place, what he has said, unity of place and unity of time. Johnson declared these two as not essential but optional devices. They may heighten dramatic concentration but are not indispensable to the success of a play. Here, Samuel Johnson wants to clarify that for the success of play, if unity of time and place are not mandatory, but without this, a play can be successful. So, Shakespeare's genius, Johnson argued, lay in portraying human nature truthfully, not in obeying classical constants. That means he do not want to create any argument or any controversy, but he has just said this. But still, we are studying why other options were wrong. Because unities of time and action, unity of time was not made optional; it was considered central to coherence. Unity of place and action, unity of action was not optional, but unity of place was. Unity of place only wrong because Johnson made both place and time optional, not just a place. So unity of time and place, according to Samuel Johnson, is not a mandatory part to make a play successful. Another question we have: who has written the two pillars upon which a theory of criticism must rest are an account of value and an account of communication? And correct answer was the two pillars. Option 2 was I.A. Richards. I.A. Richards was a key figure in the development of new criticism. Very, very important figure. You must study about I.A. Richards' work and the concept, the sixth concept he has given. Literary theory, new criticism and modern literary theory, he emphasized the role of value and communication in literary analysis. This quote aligns directly with his concern about how meaning is conveyed and evaluated. In his work, Principle of Literary Criticism, Practical of Criticism, what he has said that there was an experiment by the students of I.A. Richards. He wanted to check that how students are able to find the meaning of the given text without giving them any external background about the writers, authors, or anything, just a text. And he got the mixed response. And this is what he has given us in the Principle of Literary Criticism. What are the rules, regulations while reading a text you have to create? And also he gave the meaning, I have remembered this as SFTY, no, it's SFTI, sense, feeling, tone, and intention. Yes, I got this, intention. So this thing you also have to remember that given by I.A. Richard, and Principle of Literary Criticism are very important work by him. Now let's move to the next question. Another lengthy questions we have. In this question, we have to identify the statements carefully that found out the correct options that matched with the writers given here. And option A, Geoffrey Chaucer wrote the Canterbury Tales, Troilus and Cressida, and Legends of Good Women. So it is correct. John Milton wrote the Mask of Commerce, Areopagitica, and Samson Against. So it is also correct. T.S. Coleridge, S.T. Coleridge, there should be S.T. Coleridge, composed the rhyme of Ancient Marina, correct. Christabel is correct. And the Curse of Kahama, no, there is no work I have studied for S.T. Coleridge. Shakespeare wrote Two Gentlemen of Verona, Rape of Livy, and Troilus and Cressida. So here Troilus and Cressida is here mentioned, written by Geoffrey Chaucer, and the statement is correct. So these two options can be eliminated. Alexander Pope's work included the Dunciad, the Rape of the Lock, and the Epistle. So the option was A, B, and E only, and other options C and D we can eliminate it. Okay. So this was the correct answer, A, B, and D, E. So it shows that you have to deep learning about the, you have to deep knowledge about the work, even of all the writers, minor and major, so that we can get the statement correct. So it was correct. Geoffrey Chaucer wrote the Canterbury Tales, Troilus and Cressida, Legend of Good Women. Milton wrote Comus, Areopagitica, and Samson Against It is a dramatic poem. The Curse of Kahama was written by Robert Southey, not S.T. Coleridge. Okay, The Curse of Kahama is written by Robert Southey, and the Rape of Lycus is a narrative poem by Shakespeare, but not usually grouped with his dramatic works like Two Gentlemen of Verona or Troilus and Cressida. Now let's move on to the next question. Question 106, we have arranged the following works of criticism chronologically. In the chronology, yes, students, you are right. You guys were right that chronology and matching questions are very few, limited in compared to the other previous exam. So, and it these questions matchology they have given in between the questions, not they have followed the sequence as they used to, but in between one after the another, whether it's a memory based statements as a session reason, there is no question I found till now. So gender trouble, we have a history of gay literature, history of sexuality, new lesbian criticism, and bodies that matter. Here are the options. So the correct answer of this question was option C, B, A, B, E, option 4. History of Sexuality, Michel Foucault, 1976 in French, English translation in 1978. History of Gay Literature was the male tradition by Gregory Boots, 1998. Gender Trouble, Judith Butler, 1990. New Lesbian Criticism, Literary and Cultural Readings, edited by Sally Munt, 1992. And Bodies That Matter, again by Judith Butler, 1993. So another question we have, territorialization is a term given by Gayatri Chakri, Spivak, Edward Said, John MacLeod, Gilles Deleuze, and Felix Guattari. So territorialism is a term that is given by option 4 was the correct. Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari. Territorialism and its counterpart, deterritorialization, contradictory, are key concepts introduced by both Deleuze and Guattari in works such as Anti-Oedipus and Thousand Platos. Thousand Platos, you have to remember these terms refer to the processes by which cultural, social, and political systems establish or disrupt boundaries and others. So, territorialization, structuring, establishing, and grounding meaning within a system. This is the territorialization refers, and deterritorialization, what does it mean? Breaking away from established structures, codes, or meanings. Here you have to stabilize the structure, grounding meaning, and here you are talking about the breaking away the established structure. So both are the contradictory to each other. These concepts were widely applied in post-structuralist, post-modern, and cultural studies discourse. Another question we have, who is of the opinion that the concept of ideology is the most important conceptual category in cultural studies? I think there is some error. Who gave? So it was the ideology according to all these theorists. We have to find out the suitable who gave and who said that the ideology is the most important conceptual category in cultural studies. So it was option 2, Jeremy Turner. He was a key figure in cultural studies. He stated that the concept of ideology is the most important conceptual category in cultural studies. He emphasized how ideology operates through text, institutions, and practices to shape meaning and maintain power structure in society. So option 2 was correct. Okay. And other options are incorrect here. Ideology view, key contribution, James Carey, these are the incorrect answer. So option 2 is the correct answer. This is also related so that you cannot get confused about Raymond Williams and Jeremy Turner. Raymond Williams also said something about ideology. What he said, Raymond Williams emphasized that ideology is the most important conceptual category in understanding culture, society, and literature. Both the concept and both the quotes here are different. What he has said, that ideology is the most important conceptual category in cultural studies and in literature. According to Raymond Williams, he has talked about that ideology is most important to understand culture and society. Okay, so both slight different it has, but the slight little bit difference can make a difference. Then another question we have 109. We have to find out the list one work and list two authors correct matching. Cynthia's Revels, The Maid's Tragedy, Women Beware, Women, The Shoemaker's Holiday, Thomas Middleton, Ben Jonson, Thomas Dekker, and Beaumont and Fletcher. So the correct option of this question was option 1. Cynthia's Rebels by Ben Jonson, a satirical comedy by Ben Jonson performed in 1600. The Maid's Tragedy was by Beaumont and Fletcher. It was a Jacobean revenge tragedy written by both Francis Beaumont and John Fletcher. Women Beware, Women We Have by Thomas Middleton. It is a dark tragedy by Thomas Middleton, known for its exploration of power and corruption. And the last one, The Shoemaker's Holiday by Thomas Dekker. It is a festive and patriotic city comedy written by Thomas Dekker in 1599. Now let's move to the next question. Another question we have here, again, it's based on linguistic. So we have to choose the correct statement regarding scope of linguistic from the following. And options to describe and trace the history of all observable languages to determine the force that are permanently and universally at work in all the languages, and to study the manifestations of human speech and to consider and interpret the context of literary language. And option E, to define and define itself. So on the basis of linguistic form, linguistic scope, the correct statement was A, B, and C. Historical and descriptive linguistic, investigating universal linguistic principles and understanding human speech production and patterns. So these three were the correct option. Option D and E relate more to literary criticism or philosophy, not a part of the scope of a linguistic. I think in this question, there are more questions based on linguistic. Initial of the few questions were, we have seen and analyzed that the questions were more part of the linguistic unit. So linguistic, literary terms, literary theories, cultural studies, and literature, the work are extremely important and the deep knowledge required. Now let's move to the next question. It is arrange the following works of criticism chronologically. More than cool reason, death is the mother of beauty, margins of discourse, meter in English, a critical engagement, and the rule of metaphor. Correct chronologically, these works based on criticism we have to find, and the correct option was option 3, E, B, A, C, B. Rule of the metaphor, Paul Ricoeur, we have 1975, and English translation was 1977. Option D, meter in English, it is a critical engagement edited by David Baker. More than cool reason, Lakoff and Turner, 1989, and Margins of Discourse, edited by Barbara Herrnstein Smith, 1991. And another one, Death is the Mother of Beauty, Mark Royden Winchell, 1996. So this was the correct chronology. Next question. Another who has described his criticism as a byproduct of his private poetry workshop and as a prolongation of the thinking that went into the formation of my own verses. So we know while after this, we need to analyze the question of December 2023 and 2024. So after this, we will go into that. So byproduct, it is mentioned here. Correct answer was T.S. Eliot, option 4. It is related with T.S. Eliot. He often emphasized that his criticism was not separated from his poetry, but rather a byproduct of his poetic practices. He also described literary criticism as a continuation and extension of the process of writing poetry itself, meaning his essay and theories in the traditional and the individual talent. So byproduct, somebody was saying that ST College, no, it is by T.S. Eliot. This byproduct term is related with T.S. Eliot. Okay. Now next question, everybody. And again, we have to arrange the following stages of first language acquisition schedule in its chronological order. So it was based on language, so many questions based on linguistic, the two-word stage, telegraphic speech, the one-word stage, babbling and cooing. It is related how we start speaking. So the correct answer was option 4, E, B, C, A, B, and it starts with cooing around 6 to 8 weeks when the child is vowel-like sounds they start. Then option D, babbling around 6 months. Then option C, one-word stage around 12 months, and option A, two-word stage at around 18 to 24 months, and option B, telegraphic speech around 24 to 30 months when they start speaking. Next question. So another question we have to arrange the following works by John Storey in their chronological order of publication. John Storey. And here the work we have Inventing Popular Culture. I have heard this work. From folklore to globalization, cultural theory and popular culture and introduction. What is cultural studies? A reader, cultural consumption and everyday life, and culture and power in cultural studies. The politics of signification. So remember the writer and their work. So here the deep knowledge about the writer and their work is important to get the answer. And the correct answer of this question was option 1, B, C, D, A, E. Correct. Chronology by John Story. The work first. Culture Theory and Popular Culture, 1993 to 1994. It is a landmark introductory text that mapped the field of cultural theory and popular culture by John Story. It remains a standard reference in cultural studies and went through multiple editions. This work is. Then another options. What is cultural studies? A reader, 1996. Second, in chronology, this work provides a collection of foundational essays and extracts, making cultural studies more accessible to students and researchers. Then another option we have a cultural consumption and everyday life, 1999, that focused on how individuals consume culture and daily life. Daily life. Then another option we have Inventing Popular Culture from Folklore to Globalization 2003. This work examines the genealogy of the idea of popular culture, tracing its evolution from folklore to its globalization forms in the contemporary area from tradition to contemporary world. This work focus. And the last one in chronology, Culture and Power in Cultural Studies 2006. The politics of signification addresses the ways in which cultural texts and practices become sites of ideological struggle. Okay, so this was the correct chronology, the work of John Story. Now let's move to the next question. Next question we have, which of the schools of criticism has strongly opposed formalism in both its European and American varieties, rejecting the view that there is a sharp and definable division between ordinary language and literary language? And you can see here it is mentioned doubt. Yes, because there is option for A, D and E only. Let's discuss why it is. If you find and the correct answer, if you have found, do let me know, everybody, because there was so much confusion. Everything is mentioned here: Marxism, reader response criticism, speech act theory, new historicism, post-colonialism. So we have to get to the point that which of these schools of criticism has strongly opposed formalism in both its European and American varieties. I found two on answer. So that is why I've mentioned here doubt, rejecting the view that there is a sharp and definable division between ordinary language. So according to any of these schools who has opposed formalism, and as opposing this formalism, they have also rejected the idea, the view that there is a sharp and definable division between. So there is a two question. One, they have opposite of the school. Any of this school, one idea is opposed, and the another one is the idea view they have rejected. So I have mentioned as per the option I found, Marxism. Marxist critics argue that literature cannot be separated from its social, historical, and ideological context. They reject the formalist idea of isolating the text from society and history. And new historicism, these are the schools of criticism that they have opposed and reject the view idea. New historicism strongly challenges the notion of literary autonomy. It insists that literary works are embedded in cultural, political, and historical discourses, and opposing the text-centered approach of formalism. Post-colonialism. Post-colonial critics resist the division between literary and non-literary language, emphasizing hybridity, cultural politics, and the social uses of a language. And these were the correct reader response criticism B. It is incorrect. Why? Because it shifts focus to the reader. It does not directly reject the literary versus ordinary language divide in the same way. And speech act theory focuses on performative aspects of language but doesn't fundamentally oppose formalism's divide. So that is why A, D, and E was the correct answer. Another answer here was B, C, and D. B, C, and D. So only one is matching D. Formalism, that is Russian formalism, new criticism in the US, clear divide between the ordinary language and literary language. So both of the answer here mentioned. If any of the correct you have found, you can comment. And who opposed this strict divide? Marxism, reader response, and speech actor theory. So only the B, C, and D, and A, D, and E, these are the two answers. Now let's move to the next question. Next question we have here, who wrote the Committee of Public Instruction on Introducing English as Official Language? Introducing English as official language of the government and the medium of education. So it was option 3, William Bentinck. William Bentinck. Lord William Bentinck was the Governor General of India when Thomas Babington Macaulay wrote his famous minute on Indian education 1835. This thing is important. Bentinck supported Macaulay's views on implemented the decision to promote English education in India, but they have their own motive. So this was the correct answer, William Bentinck. So here was the question number 117 we have, and in this question there is a statement, and in list 2 you have poets, so you have to match the statements that which poet has said that. He turned his back on the 2 decades of hypocrisy. Second, B is saying the Welsh traditions of the power spoken word are present in his poetry. C, he is identified as a representative middle grove, voice of the present adjusting to the past. And option D, his poetry plays with an against romantic tradition in poetry. And the option list two poets you have Dylan Thomas, John Benjamin, Philip Larkin, and W.H. Auden. So this question was, you can simply understand that, and even you have observed this, that a difficult level the question is. They have tried to put the moderate level, but the question and phrase somehow they have put here tricky. The options you have here, and the correct answer of this question was option one. Option one, W.H. Auden, the phrase 2 decades of hypocrisy refers to Auden's rejection of interwar illusions and moral decay. Option B, Dylan Thomas first. Thomas' works is rich in orality, deeply rooted in Welsh poetic and spoken traditions. Option C, match with second, that is John Benjamin. Benjamin was a poet laureate known for his nostalgia for the past, especially in the Victorian era, and his focus on everyday middle class life. He captured the social nonsense of his time, making him a middle brow voice. So, middle brow voice here is John Benjamin. Then D, that is fit with Philip Larkin, and Larkin's poetry is famously anti-romantic, often ironic and rooted in realism. Although Philip Larkin belongs to the Romantic age, but his poetry is anti-romantic. Okay, blend of ironic rooted in realism. So this was the correct answer of this question. Now let's move to the next, everybody. Now question number 118 we have, again it's matching, and you have to match list 1, there is a author, and list 2, there is a work, the history of English prose rhythm, the Oxford Book of Essays, essays by contemporary American women and analyzing prose. And here we have the writers John Gross, Wendy Martin, George Sainsbury, Richard A. Lanham. Honestly, to be very honest, there are so many writers, few writers that you can say the name is not heard. If we have missed or where they have found, but they have they have somehow tried to make the questions, whether it's a phrase or anything, tricky for the students. So the answer of this question was option 1, A with second, B third, C first, D fourth. John Gross, the Oxford Book of Essays, he edited this classic anthology. Option B, Wendy Martin, essay by contemporary American women. She has worked extensively on feminist and American women's writing. Option C, George Sainsbury, with first a history of English prose rhythm. It was a seminal text on the rhythmic quality of English prose. And D with Richard A. Lanham, that will go with the fourth option. And in this, he has analyzes. He known for his stylistic analysis of the prose writing. So this was the correct option of the question number 118. So now let's move to the next question, everybody. Next question we have, which of the following works is written by Joseph Conrad? Tales of Unrest, The Madonna of the Future, and Other Tales, The Two Magics, The Spoils of Boynton. Joseph Conrad, you have to find out that which of these works has been written by him. So option 1, Tales of Unrest was written by Joseph Conrad. Tales of Unrest 1898 is a short story collection written by Joseph Conrad, and the other works, the other 3 works, The Madonna of the Future and The Other Tales, The Two Magics and The Spoils of Boynton, are all written by Henry James, not Joseph Conrad. Okay, so this was the correct answer. So here is the question number 120. Choose the correct chronological order of the given works in post-colonial criticism. So all these works has been given here in the options A, B, C, D, E related to the post-colonial criticism, and we have to chronologically arrange them. So this question, the answer of this question was A, C, E. In other words, that will be the first. C, nation and narration. Then you have a challenge. Option E, modernity at large. Then you have the Protestant ethnic and the spirit of capitalism. And then you have the last one, post-colonial literary studies. So this was the correct option. A, C, E, A, C, E, D, and B would be the last one. So in other words, there are two options. The students were also confused. In other words, same name, there is the one letter different. In other words, and the another word title is in other worlds. So only the L letter is different, and both are written by different writers. So here, in other words, by Gayatri Chakraborty, Spivak, 1987. It is a foundational text in post-colonial and feminist theory, explores marginality, subalternity, and the politics of language, and includes the influential essay. So this is by Gayatri Chakraborty Spivak. In this work, she has combined Marxism, deconstruction, and feminism to examine how power operates through discourse. Okay. Then in the next option, Nation and Narration, edited by Homi K. Bhabha in 1990, in this work, he has examined how national identity is constructed through narrative and cultural text. He also introduces critical concepts like, we all know, hybridity, third space, ambivalence, and also he challenges essential and monolithic views of nationhood and a major contribution to post-colonial cultural theory. So Homi K. Bhabha is extremely important. Do not miss him, everybody. Then Modernity at Large, Cultural Dimensions of Globalization by Arjun Appadurai, 1996. In this work, he has focuses on how globalization reshapes culture, identity, and imagination. He also proposes 5 key dimensions of global culture flow, termed as ethnoscopes, mediascapes, technoscapes, financescapes, and ideoscapes. So these are the 5 terms given by Arjun Adarupai. So this was the 5 terms given by Arjun Appadurai. You can remember this: ethno, media, techno, finance, ideo. He also moved beyond colonial, post-colonial boundaries to analyze modern global cultural system. And then another, the D1, we have the Protestant Ethnic and the Spirit of Capitalism by Ray Cho, 2002. It builds on Max Weber's ideas to analyze ethnic identity in modern capitalist societies. You know, if you are observing all these questions, you can see that NT somehow put all the questions in a very tricky manner, whether it's an interpretation, whether it's an analyzation. So everything is very much tricky for the students. So what do you understand that? No, it's just. So option D here is the Protestant Ethnic and the Spirit of Capitalism by Ray Cho, 2002. In this work, he builds on Max Weber's ideas to analyze ethnic identity in modern capitalist societies. He also explores how minority identities are marketed, regulated, and disciplined in neoliberal context. He critiques the commodification of ethnicity and challenges how racial identities are constructed within global capitalism. You know, if the questions are question and answer are matched correctly, I have put all the explanation, related details, so that from one question, by solving one question, we can have so many concept clear and knowledge or to face the next examination, next session. Then option B was here. Post-colonial literary studies, the first 30 years, approx 2005 or later, it was a retrospective work as such, assessing the evolution of post-colonial literary criticism over 3 decades. Then he also traces the influence of theorists like Edward Said, Spivak, and Homi K. Bhabha. Then he reflects on key debates, shifts in methodology, and the film's institutional growth. He also provides a critical overview of how post-colonial studies developed from the 1970s through the early 2000s and till now. So this was the concept and the work by these writers, in which they have discussed so many different views they have presented. So this is what you can remember simply. Now let's see the next question, everybody. And here we have a question number 121. Again, we have to choose the correct match to play and a playwright. So here we have Halley, Rabindranath Tagore, Tiger Claw, Lakha, Dev, The Flute of Krishna, P.A. Krishna Swami, Nalini, Guru Charan Das, and Hai Vadna, Girish Karnad. the correct match of the play and the playwright. So the correct answer was that B, C, and E. Here B, C, and E. B, Tiger Claw, Lakha, Dev. C, The Flute of Krishna, P. A. Krishna Swami, and E, Hai Vadna by Girish Karnad. So this was the correct matching. Tiger Claw is a well-known play by Lakha Dev. It deals with the historical figure Tipu Sultan, portraying the dilemmas of patriotism and betrayal. And you know, somehow they are finding, or they are. So one thing, another thing that we have absorbed, there is a question from history also. That means little bit knowledge, or medium knowledge we all have to about the history. So the second was The Flute of Krishna by P. A. Krishna Swami. This play is indeed written by P. A. Krishna Swami based on Krishna's mythological persona. It is noted for its lyrical and devotional quality. Then Hai Vadana we have. It is a celebrated play by Girish Karnad. Hai Vadana is based on Thomas Mann's The transposed heads exploring themes of identity, incompleteness, and traditions. And the another work, Hali, is actually written by G.V. Desani. It is described as a poetic play. The Nalini play written by Mahakavi Kumaran Asan, who is a Malayalam poet, published in 1911. It is a poem depicting the relationship between Nalini and Divakaran. Actually, these were too difficult to find out. There were so many same name questions and the writers and the work appearing. So here is the another question. Erisehungsroman is a term which signifies there is a Bildungsroman, there is a picaresque novel, these are the technique, these are the types of novel that we all have. So what is Erisehungsroman is a term which signifies whether it's a French term, Greek term, Roman term, or German term. So it is the term German that signifies the novel of education, the way we have Bildungsroman, the way we have picaresque novel. So this is also one of the term. You know, I have already uploaded the most repeated literary terms. You can watch the video, everybody. A German term that signifies novel of education. This is a German literary term. It refers to a subgenre of the Bildungsroman, which focuses specifically on the moral and intellectual education of a character. This word Erison meaning education or upbringing, Roman meaning novel. This type of novel typically traces the protagonist's development through formal education, mentors, and the life lessons leading to maturity or self-realizations. The way in a Bildungsroman from birth till the adult age, how the journey the character face, what we have been through, what the character has been throughout the life. So that is what. Here, Roman, novel of education, Bildungsroman, novel of formation or development of the character, Roman, a clef, etc. That is a French, not related to any education, and no equivalent in Greek or Roman for this specific term. Okay. So this was the correct answer. Now here is the question number 123. It is about Virginia Woolf's statement about women. So what Virginia Woolf stated about the women: she is born stupid and can do nothing but stupidity. She dominates the lives of kings and conquerors in fiction. She pervades poetry from cover to cover. She is all but absent from history. She criticized Shakespeare for being harsh and wrote to his female characters in his plays, and not until she could hardly read, could scarcely spell, and was the poetry property of her husband. So here, these are all the negative comments about a woman, negative statement about a woman. Says woman is supposed to be the property of her husband. Woman is supposed to do the stupid thing. Women do not. They do a lot of things, but somehow they disappeared from the history. There are the name I only mentioned the male name. Only we can find the dominance of the male. So this is what she has said. Now let's see what she has actually given the statement. So option B, C, and E. B, she dominates the lives of kings and conquerors in fiction, the woman. B, C, she pervades poetry from cover to cover. She is all but absent from the history. And E, not until she could hardly read, could scarcely spell, and was the property of her husband. So this was the correct statement by her. These are the direct ideas or quotes paraphrased from Virginia Woolf, especially from A Room of One's Own. A is not from Virginia Woolf. B is inaccurate. She praised Shakespeare for his treatment of female characters like Viola and Cleopatra. We have. These statements are drawn primarily from Virginia Woolf's essays, particularly A Room of One's Own and Three Geniuses. where she critiques women's expulsion from history and intellectual life despite their idealized presence in fiction and poetry and the work, how the women represent themselves through in work in history, what they have done, but still they somehow disappeared and they somehow dominated by the male class. So this is what she has given and tried to convey us. So this was the correct statement. Now let's move to the next one. So question number 124 we have here. Again, we have to choose the correct statement among the following. You know how many statement-based questions they have given, and all the options are too lengthy. This is simply a trick to. This is simply a trick by NTA to deliberately trick the student, that they will take too much time while reading the statement, the reading the options, and you can understand. So it is the statement, Macaulay was the practical man of affairs, helping and rejoicing the progress of his beloved country. We will see the options later. Then Ruskin was like a Hebrew prophet just in from the desert, and the burden of his passage was, woe to them that are at ease in Zion. Then Arnold was much like the cultivated Greek. His voice was soft, his speech is suave, but he left the impression that you must be deficient in culture. And then Norman was like the best French prose writers in expressing his thought with such naturalness and apparent ease that without thinking of his style, we received exactly the impression which he meant to convey. Then this was the statement, and we have to choose the correct one. Only, you know what they have, only we have to choose the correct statement, that different statement they have put here. There is no sequence, they no nothing they have followed here. So here they have chose the option A, C, and D, which was Macaulay as the practical man of affairs, correct. Arnold described Macaulay as a man deeply engaged in politics and national progress, but not philosophical or deeply critical. Then Arnold as the cultivated Greek. This is part of self-reflection or a paraphrased characterization where Arnold represents the Hellenic ideal, balanced, polished, and intellectual. Then another Newman as like the best French prose writer. So Arnold admired John Henry Newman for his lucid, elegant prose, comparing him to French stylistic clarity. Okay. So these three options were correct, and Hebrew prophet I tried to find, and I researched so many times, but still I could not find. Even if I was finding, it was totally confusing, and giving some other writer's name here, that John. So it was actually confusing. You know, don't you find that some of the options or a statement are invalid? Random pick they have done anything. Here is the question number 125. In this, there is a line we have to identify that in which poem this line is appeared. My babe so beautiful, it thrills my heart with tender gladness, thus to look at thee. A prayer for my daughter, Frost at midnight, Lucy Gray, ode on a melancholy. All these works are also important. You know, one-liner or memory-based question, they simply put those. So correct answer of this question was B, Frost at midnight. This is the poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, S.T. Coleridge, the Romantic Age poet. Romantic age poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge. The poem is a part of his conversation poems and expresses his thoughts while watching his infant son sleep. Coleridge reflects on his own childhood and expresses a deep wish that his son will grow up connected to nature and free from the confinements of traditional education. So this was the work. Now, here is the question number 126 we have. There is a matching list 1 novel and list 2 subtitle, Silas Marner, Sybil, Frankenstein, Oliver Twist. So the correct option of this question was Frankenstein. We have the modern Prometheus. With first option we can go. So in the first option there is option D, we have Silas Marner, the weaver of Ravello, reflects the life and setting of the main character, a Lionian weaver. Sybil, the two nations, it refers to the divide between the rich and the poor in industrial England. Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus, Victor Frankenstein's quest to create life mirrors Prometheus myth. And Oliver Twist, we have The Parish Boy's Progress. And also, let me remind you, let me tell you, let me inform you that poetry, after the poetry class, fiction, Unit 3 fiction and short stories, that is novel, all about the novel and short stories, Edgar Allan Poe and all the major novelists, minor novelists, already started and about to finish. So you can watch all those videos. And the playlist is also created by, the name is All 10 Units, December 2025. So you can easily find, okay. Another question we have, which of the following is not a kind of literary research? Bibliography and textual criticism, biographical, experimental research, or interpretive. So kind of literary research, as a literature student, we can have an idea and overview that experimental research is not a part of a literary research. We do bibliography, textual criticism, biographical, interpretation, but experimental research involves controlled experiments typically used in science, not in literary studies. So this was the correct. Bibliography and textual criticism, that deals with collecting, authenticating, and editing literary text. That is, it is a traditionally literary research method. Then biographical, we have to go through the biography. So it considers the author's life and background to interpret and analyze their works, widely practiced in literary research. And interpretive, we have, it focuses on critical analysis and interpretation of meaning within text, that we have in new criticism. Now, question number 128, we have arrange the following books in chronological order. So this is the name of the book and we have to arrange them as per the chronology. So G.N. Shuster's The English Ode from Milton to Keats, Paul H. Fry's The Poets Calling in the English Ode, John Heath Stubbs' The Ode, Carol Madison's Apollo and the Nine, A History of the Ode, and G.M. Foley's Oral Tradition Literature. There are so many new things in this question. So the correct answer of this question was option 2, A, D, C, B, E, as per the chronology. G. N. Shuster, The English Ode from Milton to Keats, it was 1940. It was a critical history of the English Ode. In this, they analyze its development from Milton through Keats. It sets the foundation for later Ode criticism. So that is why this is important. Then we have Carol Madison, Apollo and the Nine, A History of the Ode, 1960, a comprehensive study of the classical tradition of the Ode, tracing its transformation into English literary tradition. Then we have John Heath Stubbs, The Ode, 1974, offers both historical insights and a poet's perspective on the Ode form, situating it in English poetic tradition. Then we have Paul H. Fry, The Poets Calling in the English Ode, 1980, more theoretical than historical. This book looks at how poets use the ode as a vehicle of vacation and self-definition. Then G.M. Foley, Oral Tradition, Literature, 1995, the last one in chronology, and it is broader than just ode. So Foley's work deals with oral traditions and performance, influencing the study of ode structure. And so you can, all the works related to ode, all these books given here in question number 128, they have discussed about the ode, different structure of the ode by all these writers. So this was the correct option. Now let's move to the next question. Then we have another question number 129. Name the theory which assumes that culture is not separate from nature and that there is no hierarchy of actors such that the human is more privileged. Actor network theory, post-humanism, cultural materialism, and adaptation theory. In this, you have to assume, in which they have already assumed this is the statement, culture is not separate from nature and that there is no hierarchy of actors such that the human is more privileged. So it was option 1, actor network theory. This was the correct. What is this? Actor network theory developed by Bruno Latour, Michel Callan, and John Law. It treats humans, animals, machines, technologies, and ideas as equal actants in a network. It denies anthropocentrism and emphasizes relationship, not hierarchies. So all these parts, all these living beings are a part of one particular network. So actor network theory is related to that. They have not separated. Why not post-humanism? Post-humanism critique humanism in places human in relation with technology, animals, and environment, but and is more specific in saying all actors, human and non-human, are equal. So post-humanism overlaps but is broader, not the exact theory asked in the question. Then why not cultural materialism is also correct. It focuses on the relationship between culture and socio-economic forces that emphasizes ideology and material conditions. And adaptation theory we have that studies how texts are adapted in new forms, like we have novel to film, drama, then also we have film, then we write the text into the book, text into the film. It is unrelated to networks of actors in nature and culture. So this was the correct answer. Now let's move to the next question. And then we have here, in which bibliography is concerned with the close analysis of individual copies of books in the light of our knowledge of how books were produced in literary research. So which bibliography is concerned with the close analysis? Descriptive bibliography, analytical bibliography, enumerative bibliography, or historical bibliography? So the correct answer of this question was option 2, analytical bibliography. Why? Because this it studies the physical book itself, typeface, paper, watermark, signatures, binding, and press variants. Analytical bibliography to understand how it was manufactured. This is essential for textual editing and understanding variants in literary history. So analytical bibliography was the correct answer. Then descriptive bibliography, why this was not? Because descriptive bibliography records the content and physical description of a book, that they have like title, format, collection, but it doesn't analyze the production process in detail. Then we have, why not, enumerative bibliography. You can have the idea about all these bibliographies, that when it uses, simply it lists books systematically, like catalogs or reading list we have it. So it lacks an analytical depth. And the historical bibliography deals with the history of books and printing in general, that traces developments across, or you can say the over the time. It is broader, not specifically about analyzing individual copies. So analytical bibliography was the correct one. Then another question we have, again it's matching, 131 question. List 1 you have the term theory, and list 2 you have the theorist. Think description, transcendental signified, vehicle tenor, or elevation effect. So 1 or 2 are identified, 3 are identified. You can easily match the correct answer. You can simply match Clifford Geertz with a thick description. So here first A with the 4 we can go. So thick description was the theory that coined by anthropologist Clifford Geertz. This term refers to a detailed cultural analysis and interpretation. This was the thick description. Transcendental signified by Jacques Derrida. Derrida critiqued the notion of a transcendental signifier. Transcendental signified the ultimate meaning outside of a language. This is what he has said in this theory. Then we have vehicle tenor. Actually, it is the 2-time PYQ. This question is already repeated 2 times earlier. Introduced in the philosophy of rhetoric, Richard used vehicle or and tenor to explain how metaphor work. And then we have elevation effect by Bertolt Brecht, how this that you should think critically, but Bertolt Brecht's theoretical technique aimed to prevent emotional involvement with the characters and think more logically and critically. So this was the correct matching. Then question number 132, we have, in how many volumes George Eliot's Middlemarch was first published? For 5 separate volumes, 8 separate volumes, 7 or 10. So the correct answer, that George Eliot's Middlemarch was published in 8 volumes. So this was the correct answer, 8 volumes. It was the correct. Middlemarch, it is the subtitle, a study of provincial life, was published in 8 separate parts. That is the serial volumes between 1871 to 1872. George Eliot, the George Eliot is the pen name, and Mary Ann Evans chose this method of serial publication as it was popular in the Victorian age, making novels affordable to a larger reading public, making access to the more public. This was the idea by him. Later in 1874, the novel was published in a single volume edition. Okay, so pointer you have to remember: Middlemarch, middle class Victorian readers, 8 shillings per part or 8 volumes. And question number 133 we have here, list 1 work and list 2 author. Surprised by seeing 5 readers reading, the reader, the text, the poem with respect to readers. The reader in the Paradise Lost, Louis Rosenblatt, Stanley Fish, Walter J. Slatoff, Norman Holland. Correct answer, Paradise Lost, Stanley Fish, Walter J. Slatoff, Norman Holland. So this was the matching. You have to identify, once you identify all the works or any 2 or 3 works, whether it's a solving chronology or matching question, no, you will be able to solve almost all the questions, where only few left when the option is find to be tricky. So it was the option 2, which was also correct by NTA. So it was surprised by seeing the reader in Paradise Lost by Stanley Fish. This is a landmark text in Reader Response Criticism 1967, where Fish shows how Milton's poem manipulates readers into feeling surprised by seeing. Paradise Lost is mentioned here. Five readers reading, what is this? Norman Holland published in 1975. Holland in this work analyzed five readers' interpretations of the same short story to show how reading is influenced by psychology and identity. So this was the five readers reading. Then the reader, the text, the poem by Louis Rosenblatt. Rosenblatt, 1978, is known for her transactional theory of reading, where meaning emerges in the interaction between reader and the text. Then we have With Respect to Readers by Walter J. Slatoff. In this, he explores the dynamics of readers' involvement in literature, emphasizing respect for the diversity of the reader response. So the question, the one we have, in which they have discussed they have given us to the structure of ode. In this question, it is all about how readers react, how readers find the meaning, and how reader responds. So everything is related to the reader's participation while reading. Now let's move to the next question. Next question we have. Arrange the following works chronologically, and here I have mentioned doubt in the year. The work is here. There is a doubt. You can notify me if you found the correct one. The Heart of Hindustan. Actually, why there is a doubt? Because there are so many different dates. When we are about to open the book, there is something else, because there is no clarity. And if there is no clarity, why they have given such questions in the exam? To make them confused, and also to let them eat their 2-3 minutes time, which is very important for the student. The time is precious, because they have to solve so many questions and lengthy questions too within a limited time. Notice that how this question is framed, that compared to the previous year question papers that we have already solved and we have been through. It is like this examiner is testing not just memory but also your interpretive ability. They have shifted towards more application based and understanding, like the statement question we have seen so many. Okay, so let's move to the answer. So there was about the heart of the Hindustan, occasional speeches and writings, Eastern religious and Western thought, Dhampad, and the principle of Upanishad. So option 4 we have here A, C, D, E, B. The chronology we have found, but there is 1 year we will have the difference. And Dhampad we have ancient Buddhist scripture 1950s, 3rd century BCE, Eastern religious and Western thought. Radha Krishna's work published in 1939, The Heart of Hindustan published during the British colonial period 1940 to 1946 around. Then we have occasional speeches and writings, a posthumous collection 1956 to 60s. The principal Upanishad, though ancient, this refers to Radha Krishna's English translation that was published in 1950 to 1953. So here this was the doubt in the year, because it was totally different. Now let's move to the next question. Question number 135 we have. Let's read the question first. Read the following statement carefully and choose the correct ones. Mikhail Bakhtin traces the roots of the novel back into the imperial Rome and ancient Hellenistic romances. Henry James considers the novel as the epic of a prosaic modern world. Margaret Ann Doody locates novel's birthplace in the cultures of the ancient Mediterranean. Then F.R. Lewis defines novel as one bright book of life. And E, George Lucas calls the novel the epic of a world abandoned by God. And here are the options. And what was the correct statement of this question? A, C, and E. That is option 1, and it was correct. Mikhail Bakhtin traces the roots of the novel back into the imperial Rome, ancient Hellenistic romances. Bakhtin, in the dialogic imagination, identifies the origins of the novel and in ancient Greek Hellenistic prose romances and the Roman satire. You know what and how he has defined the epic, and novel is like epic. So the superiority of the novel about he has discussed. Then Henry James, we have Henry James considered the novel as the epic of a prosaic modern world. It was incorrect. It was George Lucas, not Henry James, who called the novel the epic of a world abandoned by the God. Then Margaret Anne Doody locates novel's birthplace in the culture of the ancient Mediterranean. It was correct. Then we have in her work, The True Story of the Novel, 1996, Doody places the origin of the novel in ancient Greek and the Mediterranean culture, rejecting the purely modern 18th century birth of the novel. That we know now that from the 18th century, or you can say the early 18th century, or the end of the 17th century, the novel has its root. But here in this work, she has denied that no novel is rooted in the ancient Greek and the Mediterranean culture. And that is why it is mentioned here that they have rejecting purely the modern 18th century birth of the novel that is supposed to be have like Pamela, Tom Jones, etc. Then F.R. Lewis defines novel as one bright book of life. This phrase is attributed to Samuel Taylor Coleridge, not F.R. Lewis. So this statement is also incorrect. And the great tradition but never defined it in these words. Levi's focused on the moral seriousness of the English novel. Okay, and then the last one, George Lucas calls the novel the epic of a world abandoned by the god. In the theory of the novel 1920, Lucas famously described novel this way. So this was the correct answer. Now, another confusing question, we have arranged the following commissions, committees, and events which were important in the context of the history of English in India in chronology. There is commissions, committee, and events. All together we have to arrange it. So that is why all the questions were tricky and the students were confused. They have to make many students, if they know the fact, but because of such questions, they got confused because the options they have twisted. In one question, they have tried to find out many answers. So in one question, they have asked, they have attached the many different questions. The event, as you can see in the question number 136, we have a GOCAC committee report, Acharya Ram Murthy Commission, All India Language Conference, Kothari Commission, and the Official Language Act. So the correct answer of this question was CEBDA. It took so much time to get to the correct, but still I think there is something confusing in this question. All India Language Conference held in 1949, soon after independence, and there is also the All India Language Commission, the latest one that is started in Varanasi in 2021, 25 or 23, I guess. Then the Official Language Act passed in 1963, Kothari Commission 1964 to 66, Kothari Commission 1964 to 1966, Acharya Ramurthy Commission 1990, GOCAC Committee Report 1981. There is a confusion in GOCAC Committee. So if any of you have found the correct one, please notify me. Do let me know in the comment. Let's move to the next question. There are some questions that we should leave as it is. Another question we have here, 137. We have to arrange the following works of feminism in chronological order: The Female Imagination, The Mad Women in the Attic, A Literature of Their Own, Women's Operation Today, Problems in Marxist Feminist Analysis, Evolution in Poetic Language. If all the works are familiar to you, you must be familiar with the year to put them in correct chronology. And if not the year, you must be familiar with the ages, that from which ages these works has been taken. If you will have idea about the ages, you can guess the year also. So the 137 question, the option was correct. Option 3, EACBED, Revolution in Poetic Language by Julia Kristeva, 1974. The Female Imagination, Patricia Meyer Spatz, 1975. A Literature of Their Own, Ellen Sholter, 1977. The Mad Women in the Attic, Gilbert and Goober, 1979. And Women's Operation Day by Michelle Barrett, 1980. So this was the correct chronology. Okay, move on to the next. Then we have here, again, this is a matching list 1 and list 2. We have idialect, Pidgin, Creole, register. This is the type of language, dialect, and we have to match them in the correct with the given correct with the given in. We have to match them in with the list in given list. We have to match them with the list second. So the answer of this question, idialect, Pidgin, Creole, register. These are the questions that we have must know the definition. What this form of the language means. So the answer of this question was option 1. Option 1, A first, B second, C third, D fourth. Idialect, the unique way in an individual speaks. Pidgin, simplified language developed for communication between groups. Creole is a language, it is a Pidgin that becomes native to a community. And register, variation of language depending on text or operation. So this was the correct answer. Now let's move to the next question. Who among the following is considered as the father of South African English poetry? Rider Haggard, Thomas Pringle, John Buchan, Roy Campbell. So the correct answer of this question was Thomas Pringle. Thomas Pringle is regarded as the father of South African English poetry. English poetry, He was a Scottish writer and abolitionist who settled in South Africa and edited South Africa's first English language periodical, South African Journal, in the early 19th century. His work often centered on themes of colonialism, human rights, and African landscape. So, Thomas Pringle is the father of South African English poetry. Now, question number 140, we have which of the following statements, again, they have started the first question with the statement and ending the question with the statement, and the remaining 10 questions you have from passage. And the passage questions was also wrong, so many students. So these statements have been given by Barbara Johnson, and the statement is saying deconstruction is not synonymous with destruction. The deconstruction of a text does not proceed by random doubt or arbitrary subversion. See, deconstruction is not a dismantling of the structure of a text, but the demonstration that it has already dismantled itself. This was incorrect option. Option C is, if anything is destroyed in a deconstructive reading, it is not the text, but the claim to unequivocal domination of one mode of signifying over another. Then deconstruction as a mode of interpretation works by careful and circumspect entering of each textual labyrinth. So this statement you can find here how tricky and how lengthy they are. You know, whenever you get such comparative questions, always eliminate obvious wrong first. Even if you don't know the exact answer now, this strategy somehow will improve and helpful for you with your accuracy. So do this. And also, these such questions is definitely going to eat up 2-3 minutes of all the students. If you are sure about the question or answer, the statement, you can do, or you can simply eliminate, or you can also mark, because there is no negative marking now. So you can put one of the questions, because if the question is wrong, you will have the benefit if the question is dropped. So correct answer of this question was option A, B, and D. Barbara Johnson, an American literary critic and translator. Barbara Johnson was an American literary critic and translator. In her critical works, especially The Critical Difference, 1980 to 1981, and The Barbara Johnson Reader, these are the works by her, clarifies misconceptions about deconstruction and emphasizing the methodological nature of deconstruction, not arbitrary or chaotic. That deconstruction reveals of a text internal contradictions rather than forcibly breaking it down by Jacques Derrida. Also, that it questions dominance of single interpretations, not text themselves. So this was the statement by her. And statement E, although related to deconstruction, are not attributed directly to the Barbara Johnson that she has given, but it is rather general or drawn from other deconstruction theorists like we have Derrida or Hinz Miller. So finally, we have finished June 2025, the toughest exam ever. We have seen all the questions, and initial of the questions I have discussed that the tricks they have, or the pattern of the questions that you all have to now ace of yourself to prepare for the next cycle. So you can do watch the video to get those patterns and you can note down, because this is very important. Okay. And in compared to the December one, June was the tougher. December is easier, but we cannot predict now that what is going to happen in December. So we all have to prepare mentally by to tackle each type of questions. Prepare. Class is going. Every class is the unit-wise literary term, literary theorist, practice of MCQs questions, mock test. I have already shared on Telegram channel. So do prepare. Self-study is required, and the most important revision is must. Do not miss all these things. So thank you so much for joining. Do take care of yourself, everybody, and bye-bye. And also, let me tell you, December PYQs I will bring after this. So wait and stay tuned with the English with Shabnam.